Thanks everybody for joining us. Welcome, Dan Alexander. He will be talking about fall prep and planning, and also specific mentions on vegetable garden planting. So he's a wealth of information. His classes are also always super fun and informative. So thanks everyone for joining us, and take it away, Dan.
Thank you, Jen. This is always fun. As Jen says, the fall is our primary time for planting in the Bay Area, and it's because our summers are dry, and so we have to be watering constantly during the summer. If we go away, we risk our gardens. But in the fall, the days are getting shorter and a little bit cooler, and we're planting in anticipation of the rain. Uh, it just happens that we're one of those unique few climates where the mustard family, the brassicas, grow virtually year-round, but they grow best in the fall. You may know the Salinas Valley, and along the coast, lots of our vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts, things like that, are grown commercially. And here in the Bay Area, close to the bay, we have a little bit similar climate where the nights are cool every night and the days aren't too hot. And in the fall, that's just perfect for the brassicas. So we'll be talking about them quite a bit. We'll also be talking about just general garden preparation for the vegetables, and then also what to do generally in the garden during the fall, because it's a time when you're getting the garden ready for the winter, and there are important things to do that will help you in the springtime if that's your main time for gardening. Um, Soil preparation is always the key to growing vegetables, whether you're growing them in the ground or in a raised bed or in containers on a deck in a small scale. The soil is the key to things growing well. And most of us who garden regularly are just getting toward the end of the summer season. So things like tomatoes and zucchini and beans and other kinds of squash are often looking pretty raggedy by this time. The powdery mildew has gotten them, or something else has gotten them. And so this is the time to do some triage on your present garden. Means be tough, get rid of the stuff that's not performing, get it into your green waste can or your compost pile. I recommend not putting your tomatoes in your home compost um, because it's hard to get them hot enough as they're composting to kill all the different things that bother tomatoes, and you may just be spreading things around for next year if you do it at home. So put them in the green can, let the professionals compost those at high heat, and that'll get rid of all the pathogens that live with tomatoes. Other things can go in the green waste without any problem, even if they have powdery mildew or whatever, or they could go in your home compost without any problem because since they're in the air all the time anyway, they're really not a serious problem for spreading them at home. Um, so you want to get rid of the underperformers. If you've got things like tomatoes that are still performing well, they can continue into October, even November. So keep at it. Um, what I like to do is uh, prepare the soil with compost and manure, a combination that gives you lots of relatively rapidly decaying organic matter. And it's the decaying organic matter that helps the soil texture and helps feed the plants. So I usually use a ratio of about 3 to 4 parts compost and 1 part manure. And it's good to mix up the kinds of manure that you use because they're actually quite different. And so if last year you used chicken manure, try steer manure this year, or vice versa. Um, if you are here in Marin and you go to Horse Hill and collect fresh horse manure for your garden, it's not a good idea to plant into fresh manure. You want to let it age for a while before you uh, plant in it. If you're going to leave your garden quiet for the winter, you can lay on a lot of manure and just let it compost in place on your garden and then plant in the spring. But if you're getting your garden ready for the fall planting right now, then use an aged or composted manure that's in a bag, not fresh manure that you're going to have your plants touching. All manure, including from vegetarian animals, has E. coli in it and that sort of thing. So you want to be a little bit careful about your vegetables having close contact with the manure. Um, if you dig the compost manure into the garden, then as long as it's aged compost, aged manure, you're ready to plant in a raised bed. You usually have started with a bagged kind of soil, potting soil, and the same sorts of things decompose there that decompose in the soil, the manure and compost elements. And so adding the same things to your raised bed is adequate to sort of revive the soil in the raised bed. Sloat has a very nice product called Loam Builder, which is a combination of chicken manure and compost, so that in a relatively small setting, you can just buy one bag, and you want to put about an inch to 2 inches of new compost manure mix dug into your raised bed in order to revitalize it. In containers, my experience is they usually tend to pack down over the um, course of a growing season, and they get filled with roots. And so I like to dump all the soil out of a pot uh, and kind of um, get rid of the larger roots that are in there, save the rest of the soil, and then add fresh potting soil to it at about maybe equal parts the old soil and new soil to replant the pot for the next season. And it seems to work pretty well. In all of these methods, I also add a balanced fertilizer, and that can be something like if you're going to Sloat, you can get the EB Stone vegetable fertilizer, or if you have Sure Start at home, that works very well, or the all-purpose fertilizer, or if you have the box of Down to Earth fertilizers, any of their balanced fertilizers work great to add to the soil at this time so that you have lots of fertility. Most of the winter vegetables, with the exception of peas, aren't really making fruit. They don't have to develop a lot of sugars the way most summer vegetables do, and the fruits on the trees. But they still are rapid growers, and they need quite a bit of fertility to be successful. So that means adding the fertilizer is really, really helpful. And when I say a balanced fertilizer, I mean the numbers on the front of the package that'll say something like 555 or 564 or 342. Um, if they're relatively equal, then that's a balanced fertilizer, as opposed to a bloom formula fertilizer that might be 0, 10, 10. So they're not all three balanced. Um, Likewise, you don't want one that has a very large first number, the nitrogen. You don't want a 10-2, for instance. Um, High nitrogen fertilizers are designed mostly for lawns, um, but the vegetables need more of the potassium and the phosphorus that are in the second two numbers. Um, Also, you I like an organic fertilizer. Um, the difference between an organic and a chemical fertilizer is that organic fertilizers release their nutrients more slowly and evenly over the course of the season. They're not as water soluble, and since we're going to be gardening into the rainy season, a lot of water is going to flow through the pots or the beds or the ground. And so an organic fertilizer that needs to be broken down by soil microbes will give you a more even feeding. Um, Now, the mustard family or the brass, oh, yes, Jen.
Just really quick, because I think it is a good question. Somebody was asking, do you just recommend balanced fertilizers for when you plant winter vegetables, or is this recommended every time you plant?
I generally like them all the time. Since I don't test my soil to carefully determine what's missing in the way of nutrients, I like to always add a balanced fertilizer at the time I plant anything, in a pot in the ground, whether it's a vegetable or an ornamental. I like to add a balanced fertilizer to the soil so that I know that there are basically all the major nutrients available to the plant's roots directly. Um, and so Yes, I like a balanced fertilizer, all seasons. Now, you can get fancier, especially during the summer. You can start out with a more heavily nitrogen fertilizer at the beginning of the season when you're more interested in green growth, and then transition to a fertilizer that has more of the second and third numbers later in the season when you're more interested in flower production and fruit production. But I'm never organized enough to do that on schedule. And so I like to kind of do the one and done for preparation. That's getting the balanced fertilizer into the soil. And then I can add from the top as I go along monthly in the ground, say. I can add a fertilizer, and it's not, too much to have to think about, frankly. It's a good question. Uh,
Mhm.
so the brassicas are our queens and kings of the garden at this time of year, if you want to grow them. Um, Broccoli is probably the most popular of them. And it's actually pretty easy to grow. What you're eating in broccoli are the flower buds. If you were to not pick those heads of broccoli and were to let them continue to grow, they would open up into yellow flowers, kind of mustard-like. And uh, they're actually quite pretty, but that's not why we grow the broccoli. We grow them for those buds that are so tasty. And if you look in the nursery or in the seed rack, you'll see lots of different varieties of broccoli. Um, Most of the ones that we grow uh, in our home gardens are calabrese type broccolis, originally from Italy, and um, they have the characteristic of making heads of broccoli that aren't huge, but then they make nice side branches after you cut the first head that comes up. If you just wait a little while, they'll every place where there's a leaf on the stalk, they'll make another little head of broccoli, and you can just keep cutting those off, and they become less and less over the season, but you can still get plenty of relatively small ones. And I don't worry about the heads being really big because I always cut the broccoli to cook it, um, and so that I don't have to cook it for very long. And relatively small pieces of broccoli to me are a benefit. Um, but some of the varieties that you'll see would be like De Chico. This is a seed packet of De Chico broccoli. It's an old heirloom variety that takes only about 50 days to produce. So if you were to plant it in early September, by November, you'll have some broccoli producing. Um, it's probably not worth your while to try to grow them from seed at this point. You'll want to buy little plants. If you were going to grow them from seed, you would have started in about June to get the plants ready because it takes about 6 weeks from planting the seed to getting them to a little plant that has maybe 4 or 5 true leaves on it to transplant into your garden. So look for little plants. If you want one you can get different varieties of broccoli so that you have some come on in 60 days, and then you have some come on in 75 days. And so if you wait to plant some of those later ones, they may overwinter and actually give you their best growth in the spring, which is nice to have some fresh broccoli early in the spring. Waltham 29, that's this one. Waltham 29 is a longer variety, takes longer to mature, an old heirloom, and that's a good one to plant in addition to some of the earlier varieties so that you'll get some later broccoli. You might also want to try, and these may be available in the nursery, may not be, but there are colorful broccolis. This is a purple broccoli. They actually have lots of uh, anthocyanins in them, which are healthy for you, and they make a really interesting presentation. Um, they're probably best eaten raw because if you cook the purple varieties, they turn green, and then you can't tell the difference. Um, Now, cauliflower is the same species of plants as broccoli, um, but one of the differences is that cauliflower doesn't make the side sprouts and keep producing for you. So you basically get one flush of blooms in the cauliflower, and you cut that off, and then that's it for the plant. Um, Cauliflower comes in different colors as well. I don't know that I don't have a seed packet here for one of the colored ones, but the white we're all familiar with. But it's also available. There's a variety called cheddar, which is orangey yellow, and there are purple cauliflowers as well. And then there's Romanesco, which is sometimes called cauliflower, and sometimes it's called broccoli. But Romanesco has these really interesting pointed kind of fractal buds, and you've undoubtedly seen it in the grocery store. It's got kind of a nutty flavor and is really delightful to see and grow, and is often available in the nurseries for you. So look for Romanesco broccoli or cauliflower. It's the same thing. Um, Now, other types of brassicas like collards are really easy to grow. They're just a big leafy vegetable. So the flavor is very similar to kale. And of course, kale around here can be grown year round. And most people grow the dinosaur or lacinato or Toscano kale. Those are three names for the same kale: dinosaur, lacinato, Toscano. Um, but there are also many varieties of kale with interesting textures and colors. And there's a nice seed packet of mixed kales. And kale is very easy to grow from seed, and you can start it almost any time of the year. Start it inside, get it going for a couple of weeks, and then you can put it outside and experiment with different kinds of kale. There are basically kind of soft leaf kales like the red Russian kale, and then there are harder leafed kales like the really curly kales that are uh, harder to wash clean and get ready to cook, but they have interesting textures and flavors. And kale's one of those plants where if you pick the leaves really young and tender, you can use them in your salad because they're really tender and easy to eat. And if you wait a little longer, then they get a little tougher, and you'll have to at least steam them a little bit or saute them a little bit. And when they get really old, what I do is cut the center vein out, kind of like I do that with Swiss chard usually too, and so that I'm just dealing with the leaves and don't have to cook them forever to get that center vein to soften up so that I can eat it. I really don't want to cook the bejesus out of the leaves just to save a center vein, which probably has less nutrition in it anyway. Um, Arugula is also a brassica, and that's another one that you should learn to grow from seed because it's a 28-day crop. After that, it wants to go to seed, even in cool weather. And so you want to be able to plant it and then plant some more and plant some more so that you always have new, fresh arugula coming up. Hi, Jen.
Hi, a quick question while you're on greens is, do you have any tips for pests? How to keep your greens not getting eaten by pests?
Yes. There are certain pests that are going to come every year, and you can't stop them from coming. And there I'm thinking of leaf miners, especially in chard, are a real problem. And the trick there is early in the season, put a row cover over the plants. A row cover is a lightweight fabric that allows air and sun and water through, but keeps the flying insects off the plants. And so the row cover is easy for you to reach under and deal with the plants, but it keeps the insects from flying in. And um,
So that's over the top, like you're talking like a hoop
no, you just
thing.
no, you just lay it on. You don't need a hoop.
Oh, hmm.
Yeah, it's so lightweight it doesn't hurt the plants. They keep growing, and it just covers them. It's the same material that is sold as frost protection for the plants. So it's very lightweight and very easy to deal with and doesn't involve any spraying or chemicals, which is nice. This will also protect brassicas in particular from the larva of the cabbage moth. the cabbage butterfly. It's that white butterfly that you see fluttering all about. And it's their caterpillars that do the most damage to most of the leaves of various brassicas. When you first plant, put the row cover on, and when the plants get quite a bit bigger, it probably they won't even need it because you can share some leaves with the caterpillars at that point, and it's not going to hurt anything. There are specific things available to kill caterpillars specifically. Um, the Bacillus thuringiensis BT is a only kills caterpillars. It's a bacteria, very specific, and so the more specific you can be in dealing with your pests, the less you're going to kill their predators and have to become the top predator yourself. You do well to interplant your vegetables with flowering plants that will attract beneficial insects. Alyssum is one of my go-to um, flowering plants for the vegetable garden. Coincidentally, it's also a brassica. It's in the mustard family. Um, Marigolds during the summer are helpful. Their odor seems to confuse um, insects. Um, Planting many different kinds of vegetables together is helpful because most insect pests are specialists and they go for one kind of plant. And so if you mix up your plants, they're less likely to get them all. Oh, there we go. Alyssum, nice. This Jen is coordinating with me here as I talk and putting the alyssum up. Um,
Yeah, I just
Alyssum,
thought I'd show the picture.
yeah, alyssum they've actually done quite a bit of research on alyssum, and it is especially good at attracting hoverflies, which look kind of like bees, but aren't. And they are very beneficial to your garden, both in pollinating and in uh, eating up. The flies don't eat up, but their larvae eat up all kinds of insect pests like aphids that might get on your plants. Aphids can be a problem on brassicas, especially kale and collards at times. They come and go a lot. There are lots and lots of natural predators out there for aphids, which will eventually catch up to them. Um, but a hard spray of water is always the first approach to aphids. Blast them off, disrupt their little colony. The second level would be insecticidal soap, which is relatively benign, and the third level would be an oil. But you almost never have to resort to that for aphids. Um, I I would love to have thought far enough ahead to show you a colony of aphids that were on my milkweeds and that a colony of ladybugs attacked just naturally. And one day there were nothing but aphids on the leaves. The next day there were nothing but ladybug larvae on the leaves eating the aphids. And a few days later they had crystallized and soon became new ladybugs. And it was quite impressive. So the good bugs are out there, and we have to make our gardens as welcoming to them as we can, and avoid doing things that kill off the insect pests. Um, I want to put a word in about Brussels sprouts because they've become more and more popular since they have been bred to taste better, frankly. Um, I I'm old enough to remember Brussels sprouts being uh, awfully cabbagey, but maybe it was the way we cooked them in the old days. Nowadays, if you pick young Brussels sprouts and uh, cut them in half and saute them, um, or put them on the barbecue for that matter, they're absolutely wonderful. And they're a big, glorious plant to behold. They're like a giant broccoli plant, and then all along the main stem, at all the places where the leaves are, grow the little side shoots, but they have been chosen to be these little side shoots that are little Brussels sprouts. And you just pick them off and kind of snap them, and away you go with Brussels sprouts. And the problem with them is that the timing. You have to get your Brussels sprouts in the ground in August or early September to get Brussels sprouts by December. Um, and if you wait longer than that, then they're not going to do anything over the winter. So if you want to try them this year, get them in now. And we take the summer off with these things. It would be good to do one in August, just on Brussels sprouts, and say, "Gosh, folks, get going here," because the Brussels sprouts need to get in the ground, especially if you want them by Thanksgiving. You would have had to plant them in early August.
Dan, I just wanted to be sure because I wondered, and I'm looking at your outline too, if you can talk a little bit about why, just in general, fall is the best time to plant, and what we can look to sort of plant now, because I just want to be sure we get that in
Yeah,
with the time that we have.
yeah. Well, fall is the best time to plant um, because it's going to rain before too long. And that's really the secret to successfully getting things going in our part of the world, because if the ground is wet all over, the roots can grow out willy-nilly rather than being limited to where our little spits of drip irrigation happen to drop a little bit of water in the middle of the summer. Planting things around here in the middle of the summer is very challenging, and you have to be diligent with the watering. If you get them going now, you'll have to water until the rains come. But once they do, then you've got a free lunch basically, and the plants will be well established by the next dry season. Doesn't mean you won't have to water them at all during the next dry season. Even plants that we call drought tolerant need 2 or 3 seasons to get really well established and to need minimal watering. But it's really all about the rains, folks. And the fact that we have 6 months of dry is very tough on many plants. Many of the plants that we grow ornamentally are not designed for that kind of climate. The ones that we call Mediterranean climate plants um, are from here, or from South Africa or Australia or Chile, or the Mediterranean. And those are the places that have long, dry summers and relatively moderately not very cold, wet winters. And so the plants from all those regions play together well. But then many, many, many plants that we grow ornamentally are, say, from the eastern United States or from Japan or China, um, or other areas that get summer rain all during the summer. And those plants have great challenges growing well here. And if we're going to get them going, we want to get them going during the winter when they um, can. I mean, our winters are so mild that the roots will continue to grow all through the winter. and that's what gives them a real head start. So if you're thinking about a pittosporum hedge, um, pittosporum uh, are tough, relatively drought-resistant plants once they're really well established, but they need to get really deep roots in order to do that. And so if you plant that hedge between now and December before the rain comes, then they're ready to get going as long as you water them in the meantime. But you only have a month or two to water, and then you'll get a good start. This is also the time where you need to clean up the garden a bit. Um, it's a good time to do trimming on non-flowering hedges, um, things like the boxwood and the pittosporum, and um, there are lots of shrubs around here that we grow mostly for the leaves and not for the flowers. And any of those can be trimmed now. They can always benefit from getting rid of dead wood, clean up leaves that have fallen, and get things ready so that in winter time, when it starts to be wet, you're not dealing with a bunch of um, leaves that have fallen and that you're not thinking about. Now, that doesn't mean that I advocate cleaning all leaves up and having all bare ground, but it should be done thoughtfully. I like to leave the oak leaves under my oak trees, but um, uh, any plant that has had any kind of disease going on or a lot of insect infestation, you're better off collecting up the leaves and getting them into the green can or into your compost so that those don't just repeat another year and come back again the next time. You'll have a lower load of disease and pest if you clean up under the plants. Fruit trees, you especially want to clean up all the fallen fruit. Don't let it rot in place. Um, Apples, this is one of the main ways that the codling moth stays around year after year after year. Just leave those apples on the ground and you're almost guaranteed to have more codling moths. Um, you want to be in a position to put a dormant spray on your fruit trees in the winter. So that's going to be a combination of a copper fungicide and an oil spray that'll reduce the pest and disease load considerably. And you can do that with your roses, with anything where either the leaves fall off voluntarily or you strip the leaves off. Um, you want to then put the dormant spray on them to reduce the fungal load and the insect load on them. Um, I like to mulch during the summer, but I like to pull the mulch well away from the trunks of the plants for the winter. I don't want soggy um, stuff that's wet and keeping the air away from the trunk where it meets the ground on trees or shrubs during the winter. This is kind of a recipe for having fungus and bacterial attacks at the base of the plant, what we call crown rot. And I also want to make sure on hillsides that the soil hasn't sloughed down around the bases of the trees or the shrubs. And get that pulled away so that lots of air and light can get in there where the trunk meets the ground. That's important. It's especially important for valuable trees that you have. If you have big oak trees or conifers that are on hillsides, um, check to make sure that the soil hasn't slumped down around the base of the tree and clean what they call the collar of the tree so that the soil's away from it. On most trees, it's fine to be able to see the shoulder of the first root. That can be exposed, and it's a healthier situation than having it covered up with a lot of soil. Um, and this is a problem we see a lot when people transplant things, or they look in a pot and they say, "Oh my goodness, the soil's all disappeared and I can see the roots." Well, to some extent, it's a good thing to see a root or two, at least the top of it. And you're better off to be able to see that than to cover it up with a lot of soil. And I always discourage people from piling soil on top of the original soil that a plant was planted with. Um, okay, so that's kind of the general idea is we're in cleanup mode. We're looking for damage to plants and pruning it out. Um, Fruit trees, like if you happen to have apricot trees, um, uh, get those pruned now. Don't wait until they're dormant. Also, cherry trees you want to prune now, not when they're dormant. This is to avoid bacterial infection. Um, Peaches and nectarines and plums you can wait till they're dormant. Um, since our weather has increasingly been warmer in winter, or the cold weather is waiting longer, some of the plants are having trouble going dormant, and notice this especially on roses. And So in mid-January, if your roses haven't lost their leaves, strip all those leaves off and prune them and give them a dormant spray, um, so that they're ready to go for the springtime. Um, I want to give a shout out for the flowers that you should be looking for now to plant for the fall season, and that will take you through well into winter, some of them through winter. I notice on my outline, I omitted two of my favorites, which are violas and pansies. I don't know why they slipped my mind at the time I wrote it, but they're just starting to be available now, and they're some of the most wonderful little happy flowers that you can grow for the winter, and you can grow them in the sun, or they'll grow fine in the shade. Um, yeah, there are a bunch of violas there. Um, Johnny Jump Ups are probably the most famous violas. Um,
They're
Pansy,
edible too.
and they're edible. They look wonderful in the salad and they taste great. Um, Calendulas are kind of the replacement for marigolds. Marigolds are the summer, and calendulas in the winter. They're called pot marigolds, and they come in a lot of different shades. They should be out in full sun, or they'll tend to get mildewy if they're in the shade. Um, there are a bunch of salvias called autumn sage. It's Salvia greyi, and they bloom primarily in the fall and come in a range of colors. They have the small flowers and get up about 2 to 3 feet in height, perennial, and come back year after year. Um, the They look like probably the one most well-known sage is Hot Lips. Hot Lips isn't a gray guy, but the gray guys look like a Hot Lips plant, but a little smaller. Um, in the shade, cyclamen will be starting to come in, and they've gotten kind of crazy with the number of varieties that are available now. Some of them are fragrant. There are great big flowered ones and tiny flowered ones. In the winter, they can be out in the open, in the early part of the fall, they probably need to be in the shade still because we may still have a heat problem. Um, they like to have wet feet, but good drainage. And they will bloom throughout the winter for you. And uh, I think they look wonderful in pots. Looks like that one in that white one right there looks like it's in a pot. Um, Also, primroses will start to come in. There are several different kinds of primroses, but the English primrose is probably the most well known. These are English primroses. The several colors there, and then just to the right, let's see if you scroll back down, Jen, the Primula malacoides, little fairy primrose, and Primula obconica in fabulous pastel colors with a kind of large flower. Um, and they'll all do very well through the winter for you. Um, Asters are another traditional fall flower. And there are many kinds of asters, but they're a good addition as a pollinator-friendly flower. You can see they're your basic daisy type flower, and the bees will appreciate them. Um, you can also get in some sweet peas. You may not be able to find them at the nursery yet, but this would be a good time to plant them from seed. And with luck with the weather, you'll have some flowers before the cold part of winter, um, and they'll definitely be nice, big, stocky plants that should make it through the winter and bloom in the spring. Um, Sweet peas are not edible, by the way. They're actually toxic. Um, but people use sweet pea also to apply to edible potted peas, snow peas and sugar peas, snap peas. Um, and I like to limit the term sweet pea to the flowering pea that's not edible. But this is the time to plant edible peas, and you'll be able to find snap peas, sugar peas, and probably regular English shelling peas in your garden center. Or you can start them from seed. The seeds are nice and big, they're easy to grow, um, and we'll still have plenty of good weather through October to get a really good start on a bunch of peas. And then you'll be picking them all winter until the weather warms up again. You get rid of the peas and then you'll plant your beans, I hope. Um, yeah. Any further questions, Jen?
You've answered all the ones here. I think that was a really good overview of fall and what we can do, what we can think about. I did want to plug native plants too. This is like the best time to plant native plants.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, and so definitely look at those with your fall planning.